man. You know, I think the last time I made a comparison video with like 4 headphones on the table at once, it was probably with the Sivgas. Yeah, it was the 003, 004, 005, and 007. And I think there was even the 006 there as well. So maybe there were 5 at a time. But no, I think I remember 4. Anyways, this is not about the Sivgas. This is about the HiFiMAN lineup, with the exception of the Sundara, because I don't have that kind of money, and I know you don't have that kind of money. So let's jump into the ones you can actually afford or dream of affording one day. Now, before we begin, I would just like to point out that in order to make this as quick and painless as possible, I'll only point out the similarities that I feel must be pointed out. Otherwise, I mean, expect the obvious. Does it make sound? Yes. Does it have a cable? Yes. If you feel that I may have missed something, I'll have the links for the individual reviews of these down in the description below. Feel free to check out my, either, shining review or rant, depending on which one you're talking about. And do note that the Sundaras featured in this review are the 2020 Stealth Revision. Also, the Aryas featured in this review are not the 2020 Stealth Revision. They're actually the original models. Now, with that out of the way, let's begin. As far as the contents go, the key things to point out here are the Deva does come with a one-sided 3.5mm tip ring sleeve cable, as opposed to the others dual 3.5mm tip ring sleeve cables. It also comes with a USB Type-C charger and the Blue Mini Bluetooth adapter, this thing right here, since it does give you the option to listen via Bluetooth. The Ananda is the only headphone of the bunch that comes with 2 cables as opposed to 1. These are a shorter 3.5mm L-shaped plug cable and a 1/4" straight plug cable. The materials used on this cable are unlike the rest, featuring that weird used condom kind of texture that many reviewers, including myself, point out. If I had to compare it to something else, I would call it like a rubber hose kind of material as opposed to an actual cable. Now, the Anandas do offer a surprisingly high quality box made out of a pleather material with the Ananda branding on the front and bottom, unlike the Aryas that come in a simpler cardboard box, which was kind of surprising for me. It's kind of like, really? High-end $1,600 headphone, and it's like, okay, plain cardboard box? Well, that's fine, but then why would you give me this like super luxurious looking pleather box with the $700 headphone offering? That's interesting. Now, the Aryas are the only headphone of the bunch to only feature a 1/4" plug-in option. The others do feature a 3.5mm cable with a 1/4" adapter included in the box. Now, for build quality, the winners here are, in first place, you have the Ananda and the Sundara. In third place, you got the Devas, and the 4th place, you got the Aryas. So the Anandas and Sundaras tie for first place because they both feature pros and cons that really depend on the user's preference. The Anandas do feature the best feeling rigidity in the size adjustment mechanism areas, and also offer the best balance and tension where the vertical cup pivots are, which are right here. On the other hand, the Sundaras do feature cups that are made of metal without adding too much weight to the headphones. They're just about the same size as weight as the Anandas. If anything, a slight bit heavier, but it's really not a concern at all. Now, although most people will prefer the extra thickness of the Ananda's pads, I personally prefer the thickness of the Sundara's pads because I feel that they strike the best balance between the amount of comfort the thickness provides while still maintaining the headphones relatively close to the listener's head. You don't want these to feel like they're miles apart from you, because then they're just going to feel like they're going to feel incredibly heavy, and with every movement you make, it's going to feel like you're kind of like steering a ship somehow. Now, the Deva's design is quite different from the rest of the bunch, opting for a more traditional headband as opposed to the other suspension strap mechanism. And also, as I've mentioned before, it only offers a single 3.5mm port on the left side, which is, here you go, a single 3.5mm port on the left side, as opposed to the others' dual 3.5mm ports. Now, the Arya's design is that of a more traditional HiFiMAN product, featuring that headband that forms a square on top of the user's head. So if you do this, there you see it, that's the square. You're the square. The majority of the headphone is made of plastic. Not that it feels like a weak and flimsy plastic, but it definitely might raise some concern given its price. Now, the Arya's cups are able to swivel horizontally an entire 360 degrees, which are It's amazing, honestly. Now the Devas are able to swivel around 45 degrees, if I can go ahead and capture that on camera. It's not a whole lot, but it's definitely got some swivel action going on. The Sundaras can wiggle around a little bit, if you can see that right there. And the Anandas do not wiggle whatsoever. That's just more of a concern to me. So do keep that in mind. Now, as far as comfort is concerned, the winners are as follows. First place, the Arya, undoubtedly. Second place, you have a tie between the Sundara and the Ananda. Fourth place and dead last, you got the Devas here. So this is why the build quality and materials do not fully reflect the headphone's value, because despite the fact that, for example, the Arya happens to be one of the most, more questionably built headphones of this lineup, that question is negated because of the comfort. They are the most comfortable HiFiMAN headphone I have ever worn, and they are absolutely in my top 3 most comfortable headphones of all time. The fact that they opted for a mostly plastic design means that they are extremely lightweight, especially for a huge planar headphone. Their clamp force is very close to being absolutely perfect. It's strong enough to not have these fall off, while being loose enough to not restrict blood flow in any way, mostly create hotspots or cause any fatigue at all. Their massive cups and thick pads allow you to wear them without ever feeling like your ears touch the diaphragm. Personally, I still feel like the pads could have been a bit thinner to increase the proximity to the user's head, but that's just me. Now, between the Sundara and the Anandas, I personally prefer the comfort of the Sundaras over the Anandas. The pads are a bit shallower on the Sundaras, which result in a better thickness to driver proximity ratio. Your mileage may vary. You may prefer the additional thickness of the Ananda's pads if you are going for that absolute thick pad kind of design, but it's up to you. Now, the Ananda do feature a slightly lighter weight and taller cups, which means that they are far less likely to pinch your ears, and if they do pinch your ears, don't blame the headphones, you just have huge ears then. But also feature a stronger clamp force. This extra clamp force makes them more fatiguing than the Sundaras to me. Now, dead last are the Devas, which I can honestly I can't wear these for more than 10 minutes at a time. So they feature the worst combination of aspects in a headphones design. A design meant for getting up and moving around, hence no suspension strap, a weak clamp force, and a non-supportive headband design. Like altogether, you've got a headphone that says, get up and move around, but then when you try to do that, they just slide off your head. It's like, oh, cool, I guess. And they just don't feel secure on my head at all, either. All right. Now let's go ahead and get into the portion that everybody is waiting for, the sound quality. So this entire test was performed utilizing all stock cables provided with the headphones and without any EQ applied to them whatsoever. Also, do note that I did perform the Deva test wired, not wireless. So I just have the Blue Mini in here just for the sake of display purposes, but I did perform the tests wired using its 3.5mm single-ended cable. So, because this comparison is mostly about differences within a brand's lineup as opposed to finding the best headphone of the bunch, there won't really be like any winners unless I have something unexpected or groundbreaking to report. Let's jump into the bass here. For bass guitars, the Arya definitely possessed the most natural sounding response of the bunch. It is definitely the warmest while also having the best extension, which allows it to reproduce the notes with detail and control, while also providing rumble down below. The Anandas are able to reproduce the notes in a similar fashion, but lack a sort of enjoyability factor to them. Although they sound a bit colder than the Aryas, the bass guitar sounds bloated by comparison. Now, look, the Aryas made me move when I listened to Get Lucky by Daft Punk, and the Ananda simply didn't. So, definitely heard a step down in clarity as well, so just wanted to point that out. Now the Sundaras definitely have the most laid-back bass guitars of the bunch, opting for a more casual yet still detailed approach. Unlike the previous two, they can reproduce those bass notes with clarity, but did not provide that rumble down below. However, despite their less capable extension, they sound more detailed to me than the Anandas. Last of all, the Devas give bass guitars a really wonky timbre, sort of like you're listening to it through a tube. However, they are able to reproduce that rumble a little better than the Sundaras can. And that rumble, which I should actually refer to as more of a growl of the bass guitar, it's more pronounced more detailed, but also more bloated. Like, well, that's where the tube effect comes in. Now, thus far, what we've got going on for the bass response is first place Arya, then Sundara's, then Ananda's, last place Deva. The Aryas offer the best balance between technical performance and enjoyability. The Sundaras offer excellent technical performance for the price, but are not quite as warm or enjoyable. The Anandas do provide that good bass extension, but definitely have a strange bloat going on. And the Devas are essentially a more affordable version of the Ananda in this department, just more bloat, less definition and texture, and well, yeah, it's just like a cheaper version of what I heard there. Now we jump into a second example, Zealots of Stockholm. The analysis actually changes up a bit on this one. So out of the bunch, the Aryas and Sundaras impressed me the most. At the minute 34 mark, the Sundaras reproduce the note fully and very detailed, with you being able to hear how low this thing goes. The Aryas, however, pull this off in a kind of different manner. It feels like they sacrifice a bit of the sprinkle and detail the note has up top, but replace that with a bass note so low you can only feel them in your chest. It's absolutely astounding what this headphone can do as far as its technical capabilities in the bass department. Now, the Anandas and Deva simply lack any of the rumble, although the Anandas did have the most sprinkle on top. So in this track, it goes Sundarya, Arya, Ananda, Deva. Although the Sundaryas and Aryas were neck and neck. For me, the combination of technical performance and good rumble on the Sundaras offered were what got me off the fence. But it really is like, it's more of a preference thing. Now, as far as the mids are concerned, truth is I kind of dislike female vocals across all of these headphones. If I had to choose, I'd say I prefer the Aryas out of the bunch just because the female vocals are the least forward and strident on them. Now, second to that are the Sundaras for offering a less strident experience while also being very detailed. And last, the Anandas and Devas both just kind of push the vocals so forward and express them in a shouty manner to my ears. Now, with male vocals, the Aryas and Anandas take the cake here. With the Aryas, you get a full and warm representation of the vocals with the least amount of sharpness. With the Anandas, the male vocals get a tad more forward and more detailed, but also introduce a little bit of sibilance. Now, the Sundaras weren't really terrible, but they weren't impressive either. Good detail, okay sibilance, nothing much to complain about. The Devas were just simply too forward and sharp, plain and simple. Now, as far as treble is concerned, the Aryas and Sundaras are the two that least express that HiFiMAN signature silvery timbre here. The Aryas are the most out of character from the line, featuring a treble response that is far closer to neutral than the rest, or should I just say, far darker than the rest of them. The Sundaras also lie close to neutral and possess a very linear treble response, with the exception of a peak at around the 9 kHz area. The Ananda do possess the silvery timbre quite strongly, but happen to combine it with an even more forward treble response, which they make them like I personally cannot listen to these with treble heavy tracks, but I mean, your mileage may vary. You might be more treble tolerant than I am. And now the Devas? No. Just no. Now, as far as soundstage and imaging is concerned, I really think the cup sizes and shapes really play a part here. The Devas and the Sundaras are somewhat tied for soundstage width. The Anandas take things a step up and sound slightly wider, but far taller than that. And then the Aryas do something very similar to the Anandas, but also make the sounds themselves sound distant, so to speak. The Devas and the Anandas do this strange thing with the imaging where the sound playing ends up traveling behind you as opposed to towards you. Like if it's traveling from right to left, instead of traveling through you, it travels behind you. So it's kind of has a weird imaging thing going on. The Aryas also seem to do this, but to a far lesser extent. And the Sundaras do this the least. Now for the notes and observations portion, with the Anandas and the Aryas, I did notice a weird quirk to them. Look, I have a ceiling fan, which mainly pushes wind towards me from my left side. Not incredibly powerful, it's an average ceiling fan, and I wouldn't say I have like a tall ceiling, but it's not a low ceiling either. When wearing the Anandas and Aryas, I can hear a strange wobbly sound coming from the left driver. This can only be heard when not playing anything or on quieter passages. It must be that the diaphragm is so thin and tall that the wind actually moves it too. It never feels like they're going to rip or anything. It's just a thing to point out, especially, let's say if you have a tower fan and you have it pointed at you from one particular direction, you might really want to second guess either one of these two, because it's definitely gonna make that wobbly sound, and it might even be audible on the like mid to louder passages of tracks as well. Just a thing to point out. Now we reach the conclusion here. So HiFiMAN has really stepped up their game from their startup days. Their offerings do have a very similar sound to them, but are ultimately different enough for you to make a choice between them. However, this does not mean that they are perfect. Some are flawed, some are even more so. In order of what I personally prefer, this is the way I would rank them. Arya's and Sundara's up top for first place. Ananda with EQ applied is third place, and then Deva's dead last. Now, what would I not listen to? I would not listen to the Anandas without any EQ applied, and I definitely would not listen to the Devas in any regard, in any condition. Now, both the Sundaras and the Aryas are exceptional headphones and should definitely be considered as the next addition to your headphone collection. However, it is tough to say which is the better choice, since they seem like they appeal to two very different types of listeners here. The Sundaras cater to people looking for a slightly hyped and detailed sound at a price point where diminishing returns have not really kicked in quite yet. The Aryas, on the other hand, seem to cater to listeners that crave a little more relaxed and comfortable sound signature that they can enjoy while reading a book at night, or, well, let's be honest here, surfing Reddit or scrolling through Facebook, you boomer, at night. Now, compared to the rest of the HiFiMAN lineup, the Aryas are definitely the most lush and pleasure-oriented of the bunch. So, which of these two is the better choice? It really depends. Do you seek the best bang for your dollar in the planar department? Do you want the more forward and detailed treble response? The Sundaras are the way to go for you. However, do you want to relax and enjoy your music without worrying about discomfort of any kind? And do you want that legendary subwoofer type of bass response? Price being no concern, do you just want the best for your money to relax? I think the Aryas are for you. Man, this one took me a while. It really did. So, that's pretty much going to do it for me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Leave your comments down below if you think I may have forgotten about something. If you want me to answer any question regarding my experience, don't forget I have a Patreon. If you like what I do, if you want to see more of these comparisons or individual reviews of a particular headphone that might be, let's say not on the cheaper side, i.e. the Sundara, then go ahead and, check out the Patreon, and I'd really appreciate it if you could become a patron. So yeah, that's going to do it for me. Which one is your favorite of the bunch and why? Go ahead and leave that down below, and I really hope this video helped out your purchasing decision. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one.